morning once again. We are ready for the second session. Welcome back from your tea break. It's a minute to 11. And we shall start. I see so many people online, so we can move forward with our program. Our presenter is already here. The chairman is here as well. It's a rich, interesting topic. And one, I think retirement is something we should have done yesterday. I'm hoping after this session, we shall refire, not retire. So we should look at refiring. So our chair for the session will be CPA Michael Otonga. CPA Michael Otonga is a man married to a lady. He's 53 years old, turning 54 in January 2021. He emphasizes he has been married to one woman all the time for 26 years. They celebrated their 26th anniversary virtually yesterday. Let's clap for them. He has 7 children. And of these 7, 4 are adults. The firstborn has already graduated. And he emphasizes he's soon becoming a father-in-law. He went to school. That's why he holds the job that he holds. He also served as a commissioner in URA in charge of finance, HR, and IT for a period of 9 years. While at URA, he served as the for 6 years. He's currently Director of Finance and Administration at the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. During lockdown, he was one of the farmers who supplied Kampala with matoke from his small farm. So members, join me in welcoming our chair for the session, CPA Michael Otonga. He will introduce the presenter who is well known to you. Michael, you're welcome. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Allow me to remove this. I will put it back as soon as I sit down. When I started working so many years ago, I was told the retirement age is 55. I thought it was too far. In my early 20s, I started working in mid-20s. Then there was told retirement age was 55. I said, that's too far. You have to work for donkey of years to reach 55 years. Today, I'm 53. In January, I'll be 54. And 55 has come very fast, faster than I thought it would be. I have been lucky as a person to work for institutions that really paid fairly well by Uganda standards. Right from my very first job, I worked in the places where I was paid fairly very well. Incidentally, I didn't hear about retirement. Nobody talked to me about it. And I wasted money at those initial years of my beginning of working life. I spent a lot of money on alcohol, drinking, hopping from one club to another. In my years when I was growing up, there was a club called Tropicana 110 in Udium House. For those of you who are in my age group, there was another club called Club Clouds. And then there was my favorite one called Pulsation in Kabbalah Gala. We will compete that who is going to the last couple going to remain on the floor of the dance floor. So we spent so much money. There was a bar called Rock Garden in Speak Hotel. From work, we will go to Rock Garden. There and spend the evening there. a lot of money was spent. We used to order for beers in liters, not in bottles. You will say, give us 4 liters, you give us 10 liters, you give us, this number of liters of drinks. I spent money on useless things. I only wished somebody had talked to me earlier about retirement. I would have, yes, as a 26 years old, I would have probably spent some money enjoying a bit, but then I would have started saving earlier. I was a little bit privileged that when I started hearing about retirement, it was in 2005 when I was appointed Assistant Commissioner of Finance and Administration in URA. The talk about retirement then now began, and it was very, common and frequent. And I'm really very grateful to the CEO of URA at that time, Mrs. Allen Kajina, to introducing us to so many talks about retirement, preparing for retirement. And I took it very serious. And we were even privileged that we had to set up a retirement benefit scheme of the Uganda Revenue Authority. Me working with Edna Rugumaya, who is now in UNRWA, Doris Akol, the former Commissioner General of URA. We set up the retirement benefit scheme. I was the first board chairman of the retirement benefit scheme. I worked with my colleague for 6 years, then stepped down to give room for another chairman of the board to take over. And by the time I stepped down, the scheme had assets of about 50-something billion. Now I'm told it's well over 100 billion in assets. Retirement became real to me when my father retired. When my father was a teacher, when he retired, I walked to a place called Ministry of Public Service in Mbwandegea for 7 straight years, trying to put him on the payroll, the pension payroll. I failed. I'll go there with a number of documents and files. I find gentlemen there in Ministry of Public Service who are so insensitive at that time to the retiree. I would meet senior citizens who have retired. They have given diligent service to this country, and they are looking to be put on the on the payroll. I only succeeded to put my father on the pension payroll when the payroll was decentralized. It was in a Ministry of Education. I have a colleague there who is an accountant. I just called him and said, now that the pension payroll has been decentralized, help me. I told him about my problem. And at that time, I'd just been here in the ICPAU seminar. I chaired a session just like I'm doing today. And there are people in the audience who had actually seen me, who are accountants in Ministry of Education. So when I went to Ministry of Education, my father's paper, they saw me and said, no, we recognize you. You were at the seminar the other day. And they said, I told them my problem. And then they picked my father's paper. And within 2 months, my father was put on the on the pension payroll and started receiving payroll. I have seen people how anxious they are when they are about to retire. In my position as the Commissioner of Corporate Service of URA, you see how people are anxious. Even when they have been prepared, they have talked to, they have tried to tell them about how anxious they are. I have seen how people suffer when they actually retire. A colleague retired and kept coming to office for 2 straight months every day, coming to office. When he has already retired, I was told as a commissioner that there is this person who keeps coming to office every day. So I called him and I had to go through a counseling session, talk to him and help him so that he can stop. But in the process of talking to him, I realized that he was not welcome at home. He wasn't welcome. Home was very uncomfortable to him, and the wife and the children did not welcome him at home. It wasn't. So it was hard for him to stay at home. He was used to coming to office all the time. I have had a privilege to study in the UPDF Junior Staff College in Jinja. And when I was there, one of the lessons that we went through is how do you acquire power, utilize it, and retain it. The instructor was very, very dramatic. He gave us so many examples. Very, very dramatic instructor. How do you acquire power? How do you utilize it? And how do you retain it? Actually, one of the examples is he said, you men, he told us that men are starving on retirement because you misused your power when you are working. You mistreated your wife. You mistreated your wives if you have many, ever had many. And when it comes to retirement, nobody wants to attend to you. You are there on your own and you are now starving. And many men are starving because of misuse of the power that they have acquired when they were working. They didn't utilize it well. And then I didn't remember it. As a young boy in senior one, I met one of the Kojas in school. They told us so many things. And the Koja was talking to us one time, told us that as a man, when you get a lady in the future, place yourself in our mind in such a way that you will never be replaced when you are alive. Place yourself in the mind of a lady in such a way that you'll never be replaced when you're alive. And I'm a very good student of such unique education. And I make sure that I am not replaced when I'm still alive. I could probably be replaced when I'm gone. When I left URA and moved to Petroleum Authority of Uganda, one of the first documents I worked on was the Human Resource Management Manual. I needed to have a manual in place so that when I start recruiting the staff, I have a manual policy, a human resource policy to manage the staff. Now, I drafted the HR manual, and in the manual, I put the retirement age at 60. I took the manual to the board, and the board had a very convincing argument and said, remove that retirement age of 60. So we removed the retirement age of 60, and then we put in a very generous term limit in the HR manual of the PAU, Petroleum Authority of Uganda. So that was 2017. In 2018, one of my colleagues wanted to benchmark with that HR manual. When you're reading through, he didn't see retirement age. He said, man, you are very brilliant. How did you, pull out this? I told him that that was unintended consequence. We believe that the retirement age should be there in the manual. I'm going to engage, and when we review the manual, probably we'll be able to reintroduce it and put it back in the manual. For him, he thought I went there and erased the barrier to entry so that people don't come in the authority. No, we will see how to engage on that. One day you are going to retire, and you need to prepare for it. We are privileged this morning to hear from a founding member of the ICPAU. CPA David Opiokello is 71 years old, married with 7 children. He attended Lawn College, Lira, before proceeding to the University of Nairobi in 1970, where he graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce degree majoring in accounting in 1973. He studied professional accountancy, SCCA, and became a fellow in 1987, enrolled as a member of ICPAU in 1994. He's a proud member of the Institute, ICPAU, and is an SCCA with good standing. After completing BCom, Mr. David Opiokello, in 1973, he joined the East African community as an accountant and worked in Arusha and in Mombasa from June 1973 up to June 1977, when the community collapsed. Thereafter, he joined Kenya government and worked with the Kenyan government until 1981, when he joined Bank of Uganda as the deputy chief accountant. Mr. Opiokello rose through the ranks in Bank of Uganda and was appointed acting governor from September 2002, which position he held, except for the period of December 2004 to April 2006, up to 2009, when he retired from Bank of Uganda. Since 2006, he sat on many boards, both for profit and non-profit oriented businesses. Currently, he sits on the board of Housing Finance Bank and the insurance company of East Africa, the Life Business. Him and his wife are proprietors of Dara Christian High School and Truth Nursery and Primary School located 6 kilometers northeast of Lira town. At the time of closure of the schools in March this year, the school, both the secondary school and the primary and nursery school had a population of 1,500 pupils with 110 employees. That's a huge number. Since retiring from BOU, he has relocated to Lira, where he's living with his wife. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome Mr. CPA David Opiokello to speak to us. It's a pleasure. You are welcome.
Let me also follow the tradition that has been established since we started this seminar. Good morning, everyone. I'm also very privileged to have been invited by the Institute to be able to share something about retirement, given the experience that I've gone through in the last 11 years since I left active employment. I want to pay tribute to the Institute for the way it has grown from the time that the Institute was started up to now. Its influence in a number of areas in government. Now the Institute participates in policy making, particularly when the budget is being drawn up. And therefore, all of us who are members ought to be very grateful to the way everyone who has contributed has been able to proceed for the Institute to arrive where we are now. And therefore, we all ought to be extremely grateful to everyone who has made that contribution as members of the Institute. Just before I forget, I want to just take a little bit from the chairman of the session, from Michael, regarding the experience at the cabinet, at the public service office for retirees. My father worked with the government and he retired at the age of 66. And when he retired, it was very difficult for him to get his pension and gratuity from the ministry. He visited Kampala many, many times. I told him that I didn't see any reason why he was continuing to spend his money to come and visit Kampala for this, because some of us, his children, were now able to take care of him. I said that, no, I work for this country. I need to get the benefits for which I worked. So he came here many times. So one time he told me that he wanted to see the permanent secretary in that ministry. And I said, okay, we can try. It's not always very easy. These are senior people. They're always in meetings. Let us go and try. And as Michael was saying, they're always, when you go there, at that time, there were many old people, some of them walking with sticks. It was a pathetic sight. I think the degree of empathy and sympathy at that time was extremely low by some of the people who are working there. So, because at that time I was working in the Bank of Uganda, we made some appointments, but we didn't find the permanent secretary, but we found one of the commissioners. So my father explained to this commissioner how many times he had been there and the fact that he had not received his pay. So my father told the commissioner, he said, you've been working here for a number of years. A time will come when you retire. If you want me to die and I'm buried, then you give me a check so that the check is put on my coffin and the grave is covered. I will take that. So the guy said, no, Mzee, you can't talk like that. We are going to do something. So I think it was tough for him. So he called someone, I remember the name was called Mobiro. So he told the guy that he wanted the Muzee's money to be on the account within 2 weeks. The money actually arrived within 1 week. You know, all the arrears and which he had not received, everything arrived within 1 week. So I kept on wondering, was it documents? What was the problem? So I am sure that Michael, just like your dad experienced, mine also went through the same process. So now let us go to the presentation.
The outline will be, I will have some introductory remarks, and then I will talk a little bit about some recent transitional experiences of those ones who have retired from the places where they were working. And then we'll go to the meat of the issue of planning for retirement, and then we'll have some concluding remarks. Now, most of what I'm going to say are very much a reflection of my personal experience. There will be others that perhaps do not relate to me personally, but a lot of it will be relating to me because that's what I've gone through. And that's what I think maybe I can share. And if you find it useful, it may be a good thing to be able to try to do. Let us start, I think, by definitions, because when we say somebody retired, what do we mean? Now, when you go to the Oxford Dictionary, the first one there, permanently leaving the regular workforce and attaining a fixed given age, is what they put there. So it means that one will permanently leave the working force, the regular working force, after attaining a particular age. So the age is very important. The age is the key element there. You may still be very strong, you may still be very, very skilled, but when you reach a particular age, then you will be declared, that you are retiring at a particular point. But there are also many other people treat this differently. Some people would work, retire at 55 or at 60, but they look for another job, a regular job like the one they have been doing before. They will also describe themselves as having retired. And then we also have, I think, situations where people get stopped from work by the employer, either because they're restructuring for some reason and the job they're doing is no longer there. So they are paid off some money. So they're also described as having retired. Or it may be a medical case or some other issue. So there are different variations in the understanding of the word retirement. Let me just go through a few perceptions on the concept of retirement. And I think even Michael, mentioned some of these. We all know that all of us at some point will retire. It is inevitable. As long as we are living, this is something we all have got to accept, that at some point in time, we shall retire. Even if we have reached what is described as a retirement age, we can still continue to work, but we shall reach a level where we are no longer able to do any work by ourselves. And maybe we have to rely on somebody else. My father, who I talked about, my father worked as a magistrate in government. He retired as magistrate grade 2. He retired at 66, as I mentioned, but he lived another 32 years before he died 2 years ago. So you can imagine if you retire maybe at 60, we all don't know when we are going to die. In his case, he died at, it took another 32 years before he died. So that meant that he needed to have some resources which would continue to help him to be able to live a certain level of lifestyle. Now, if he doesn't have that, or if he didn't have that, it would have been a problem for him. Maybe he might have died much earlier. In his case, we, his children, came in, even though he was earning some pension, it was not much, but we came in to help him as well. So I think this is partly why he was able to stay that long. So generally speaking, just like Michael pointed out, there is generally some fear. Whenever you mention this, maybe not now. I think now because there is a lot of turnovers in many institutions. People are moving from job to job. So the idea, the concept of retirement now, perhaps is not as strong as it was, say, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, because many years ago, during the times of people like me, when you joined an institution, you work for it until you retire. I worked for Bank of Uganda for 28 years. From the time I joined in 81 up to the time I left Bank of Uganda. So many people were doing that. But now increasingly, I think because of many changes in the environment, in the economy, I think we are seeing less and less of that. And as Richard Gerugaba told us yesterday, now skills are becoming, you need more skills, and therefore people are moving from one place to another, and therefore perhaps maybe this fear, maybe not, maybe it's not as strong as it was at that time. But for many people I spoke to who retired, you find that there's a degree of uncertainty because you don't know what's going to happen come that day when you retire. So there's that general fear. Also, many times there is unclear expectation of the kind of lifestyle you're going to lead. Michael just told us, that he was helped by, I think, the situation that he found himself in. But if he had been drinking up to the time he left, then suddenly the amount of money he gets, is dramatically reduced. What kind of lifestyle do you think he would lead? So those expectations of what kind of lifestyle one would lead after leaving your regular employment sometimes can be a problem because it's not clear in one's mind, what are you going to do? What kind of routines are you going to, to have? I am told that there is a colleague of ours who retired from Bank of Uganda. His routine is very interesting. The Bank of Uganda pays him, of course, some pension, but he wakes up in the morning, takes some breakfast, then after maybe reads papers, then he takes some ajono. I think someone talked about ajono, one of our chairmen here, takes some ajono, after for a while, then he sleeps, and then, he waits for the evening, he eats supper, then he goes to sleep. So that is his routine. So once in a while, he might go out to the city, might travel somewhere, but that is his choice. That is his choice. So usually there are unclear expectations in the changing lifestyle. Also because we have heard of negative examples in some cases. Sometimes it is frightening because if some colleagues, you have heard about them, you've seen them, they have had issues, they have had problems. I was told of one guy who retired from government. He didn't have a house in Kampala. He was working in Kampala, I think at the middle level category. He retired, so he didn't have a house to go to. Neither did he have a house in Kampala, nor maybe in his home place. So he was forced to divide his family to different relatives. So he went to stay with an uncle. I think the wife went to stay with another relative, and the children were staying with another brother. So the family, this is I think supposed to be this issue of expectations. So the family was kind of scattered at that time immediately because he could not sort of see what he would do immediately. So when someone sees that sort of thing happening to a colleague or to a friend, it becomes, they begin to get worried. So those negative examples can be a problem. Many times, because just like Michael said, because when we are young, when you're retiring in 30 years time, in 25 years time, in 40 years time, it looks very far, So the urgency, the need to be able to think about it, to be able to do something about it is not there. You have many other issues, many other pressures that are coming to you all the time. So because this one is a bit far, it is just natural that we kind of postpone it, we defer it for a while before we begin to take some action. So many times you find that there's little planning, sometimes there's no planning at all, simply because we think it's very far away. My firstborn son is a businessman. He studied in the US and did some work there. Then he relocated to South Africa. He runs a business with a colleague of his from Ginger. And I think their business is doing well. Now, each time, from the time he became 30, every time he celebrated his birthday, I would always remind him that, Richard, now you have celebrated your 30th birthday, you have 10 years to reach 40. You have 9 years to reach 40, you have 8 years, you have 7 years. So when he became 40, now, you have 10 years to reach 50, 8, 9 years to reach 40, 50 like that. So now he's 45. So if he was living in Uganda and not doing his own business, perhaps now we'll be only having 10 years. And if you are not started doing something, that can be a problem. And again, as Michael said, sensitization of this issue seems not to be maybe as strong as or as desirable as is the case with many institutions. I think that it's a good thing for many institutions to start doing this at an early stage so that people can begin to think about it. When I was in the Bank of Uganda, I visited South African Reserve Bank, and I found that for them, they had a policy. Once you join the bank, those who come from university, one of the things that they do is to have a program that teaches you about retirement, expectation about retirement. So you know about it as soon as you've joined the institution. So it may be a good idea to do some sort of sensitization. Then, because of many changes in the economy, there are some, I think, people who think that the notion of retirement is no longer relevant because they are working in many institutions. Fewer and fewer institutions are putting some sort of no age limit. So you can just work so long as you have the skills. It doesn't matter. Once you have the skill, you can just work, up to when your skill goes down. So these are some of the perceptions that that I have come across in my discussion with the various people. Now, each time that we are approaching retirement, all retirees, all of us who retired, we have at varying degrees in our transition from normal working life to a retired lifestyle. And from what I was able to gather, you find that a number of people, they may not have thought of what to do. So sometimes there's a lot of idleness. They may be receiving some money, maybe pension or something, but because they've never thought of something to do, so they take time during the first few months, they just sit at home or sit somewhere or goes to a club or something. So you find that there is also a group that does that. But there are others also who get involved in activities. They have thought about it. They want new kinds of activities. They want new routines. So that has also happened. Also, many times when people retire, the majority of people, whatever income they generate, in general, on average, is much, much less than what they were earning when they were actively working. Whether it's a pension, whether it is a business income. As I'm going to show you, I got some information from NSSF. There were a number of former members of NSSF who confirmed that although they were doing business, but their income was usually much less from what they were earning, sometimes by even 50%, sometimes by 20%, sometimes by 30%. So that means that the majority of people seem to live in a situation where their income has dropped quite a lot, which means that one thing is to think of how can you change your lifestyle to fit into that income. Because if you don't change your lifestyle to fit into that income, you may have a problem. So that would be important. Also, many times, because we have been used to workmates, we have workmates we work with, subordinates, senior people. Now, once we leave the workplace, we go home. We don't have them anymore. But even if they're there, we can talk to them on the phone. But the regular interaction that we have been used to is no longer there. So we need to find some new group, some new people who we can relate to, apart from maybe family members. So that also sometimes happens, and sometimes when you don't have these associates, then it can also be a problem. Many times also, it is difficult to change our mindset that now we are going to face a new situation. So we need to change our mindset so that that mindset, the new one, can fit into the new circumstance. So that, I think, has also been happening. Then we may also find that we may need to adjust our relationships in the family. Yesterday, we had Dr. Lab telling us a lot about the family. And because when both spouses are working, for example, one of them retires, that means that the way they relate when they are working is a little different from the way they're going to relate when one has retired. Because now one may be staying at home or one may be doing a new job. And therefore, one needs to think about how are we going to relate given this situation. I have a family friend who left Uganda and went to the UK because of, I think, political issues. When they arrived there, his wife got a job. His wife was a nurse. She got a job quickly, but he didn't get a job. And they had been married for some time without a child, so they got two children who came one after the other. So now, because the wife was the one working and therefore earning the bread for the family, she needed to leave the child with the father. And the culture in Uganda, when the baby is still young, usually the mother is the one who should be taking care of the baby. But in this case, it became very difficult. So the first few times, it was really hard for him. I visited him a few times. Every time I visited London, I would visit him. So he had to learn how to raise a baby, almost like a mother. And that adjustment was very hard for him to accept that this is now happening, this is my new situation, really took time. But eventually, he had no option, because otherwise, if the wife was forced to come back home, they would have no income. So adjusting his mind, I think, became quite a problem. Also, what is common, healthcare issues for self and family, many times I think has been challenging, because healthcare is, it's expensive. We have been talking about health insurance here. We have not been able to conclude it. So there are not many former employees who are able to sustain health insurance after they've left position of employment. And therefore, they find it very hard to take care of themselves from a health point of view. And I am sure that there are many former retirees who are passed on basically because they're not able to take care of their health issues. Yesterday, we had a lot about diabetes. We had, we have, in this conference, we have had a lot about health issues. So whenever people retire, I think this issue tends to take an upper hand, and therefore it can be a big problem. One of our former governors, when he left the bank, he fell sick. So when he fell sick, I went to visit him when he was now quite sick, actually. So when I went to visit him in his place, he told me that it was very difficult for him to adjust his mind from the time he was governor to the time he left, from a health point of view, because he was getting treatment in a South African hospital. So he had to travel there many times. So he told me, he said, David, I used to travel business class, first class, but now I have to go economy class. And that idea just of going economy class, was kind of a bit difficult for him to accept, but eventually he accepted. And then he said, I ran out of money because the sickness, I think, was very expensive. So I had to call upon my children. Fortunately, some of them, one was in the US, one was in some other place. So they had to sit down and contribute money so that he could be treated, because he didn't have a health insurance arrangement. And at that time, Bank of Uganda had not yet made arrangements for past governors to be able to get treatment from the bank. So healthcare is certainly a very important item to deal with. Sometimes retirement may require one to relocate, like in our case, me and my wife, we had to relocate to Lira from Kampala. So some of those are things that we need to kind of think about. Now, there are some examples that I came across, and I wanted to, I think, share these examples, and I will begin with the National Social Security Fund. The National Social Security Fund sometimes back did some surveying. The fund wanted to find out from its former members the quality of life they were leading after receiving the benefits. If you receive the benefits today, what kind of quality of life are you leading 1 year from that time, 2 years, 3 years down the line? So there were a number of issues that came up. For one thing, for example, they found that the majority of the people they talked to, they had made contributions for roughly about, I think, 17 years. And many of them, because their incomes were not big, so on average, it was something like 1.4 million per year. So when you translate that to those 17 years, not a very, very big amount of money. But this was partly because the NSS itself came into being not too long ago. But as we continue, maybe those ones who are on it now, perhaps would be better off. So there were many findings, but I've just had a few here on the slides. So one of them was that the benefits that these people received, for example, sustained 53% of the beneficiaries for less than a year. So that means that if you have 100 people who are paid today, now between today and the 27th of November 2021, you will find that 53 of those people, they actually consumed all the money before the end of the 1 year. Some of them maybe 6 months, some of them maybe 8 months, some of them maybe 9 months, some of them maybe even a few months. So a fairly large group, had already used the money just within not even a year, within less than a year. Then they also found that 98% of the beneficiaries had no cash from the benefits by the year end. So when you look at the year end, when you talk to them, only 2% of those who received the money had some money from that money they received crossing over to the second year. Now, between this second year and the third year, all the money will be finished. So technically, after 3 years, none of them would have any cash available with them. And yet, of course, many of them would be living for a much longer period. So if they don't have anything else, that would be a problem. They also found that 45% of the benefits were spent on building or improving homes, which means that many retirees, the ones they surveyed, most of them probably had issues with either home or maybe building a new house or improving the house that they already built. So they spent quite a bigger portion of the money on improving homes or on building, which meant that now they already tied the 45% in assets that were not liquid. So they only had 55 to play around with. So this is quite a fairly big amount after reaching 55, for example. What would you do with your other routine requirements? They also found that 40% of the beneficiaries spent 12% of their benefits on education. And what surprised me was that on education, this was on education for the beneficiaries themselves and also for their children or dependents. So I was wondering at 55 what kind of studies they were going to. But I didn't go through all the, because it was a long document, to find out of this 12%, what is the proportion of that money spent by the beneficiaries themselves. It would have been quite interesting. And then many of them also indicated that food, health, and education are the most common priority areas for retirees. So those are those are some of the things I found from there. The majority of retirees, they continue to be engaged in gainful employment. After reaching 55, they look for another job, to work, or they started something that would be that can enable them to receive a regular salary or a regular pay. But most of them, majority, recommended that it is better to have a steady cash flow. Actually, some of them said rather than being given a lump sum, they would prefer being given the sum in installments, maybe 20% today, maybe another 1 year, maybe 20%, like that for over a period of time. So they felt that this would help them to manage their lives better, which suggested that perhaps people need this sensitization more, need some training, because when you are trained on it, when you discuss, you learn about it, it is much easier to be able to try to implement a system that would go away from this kind of problem. Then, because I worked in the Bank of Uganda and many people retired from there, I thought that I should also give ourselves some scenarios that I saw there. In the Bank of Uganda, there were also a number of staff who retired. Now, the Bank of Uganda had a system at that time where if you reach 55 years of age and you were thought to be somebody with a unique knowledge or a unique skill or some special skill, or you are still very useful, you'll be given a contract, maybe 2-year contract. It could even be renewed, but eventually you needed to leave the bank by the age of 60. Now, this was meant initially when the board decided on this for a very small group of people. But many people who reached 55 years they were not ready to leave, they were not ready to retire. And at that point in time, I was in the deputy governor's office. So this mostly came to me because I would be the one to approve. So a number of people came to me. Someone would come and say, Mr. Okello, I have my last born is in senior 2, senior 3. At least if I get 2 years, maybe I can send this child to senior 4 or senior 5. So if I leave now, they may leave school. Another one will come and say, look, one of my children is at university, maybe the last one or maybe the second last one. At least this one, I want this one to finish because this one is more promising. It has 2 years, 2 years or 3 years. If you give me 2 years, I can think of doing something else to finish the 3rd year. So there were many of that type of requests. Then we also had something very interesting. Many staff, when this issue came up, many staff members started proposing to change their birth dates. They said that when they filled in the forms, when they joined the bank, there was some confusion, there was a bit of a problem. Maybe the parents did not tell them the right age. So they wanted to go back to Commission of Oaths, to swear now a new age, a new date when they were born. So there were also a number of them, in that. But all this was because they never thought about this. And now retirement is facing them, there, and they don't know what to do. So they started thinking about something like this. So in that case, the bank just decided that we rely on the form that was filled at that time, because at that time, I think people were more honest. They had just joined the bank. They were not thinking of anything else. So that information should be much better in order to avoid more issues. So we had that. Then there were some who, after reaching retirement age, they also sought gainful employment opportunities elsewhere. They went to various companies or institutions to get employed. We had actually a few who joined commercial banks after they retired from Bank of Uganda. And some of them were from the supervision department of the central bank. And in some cases, I think one or two that I knew, many of them were put in middle level kind of management in these banks. And they were reporting to those ones who used to report to them. So it was kind of a difficult situation, because if you go to a place, somebody was reporting to you, now you have to report to them. It's a bit, I think it's quite challenging. So we also had that kind of situation. I think because of that problem, many of those who joined commercial banks did not stay for a long time. They, maybe 2 years, 3 years, then they left. Then we also had a situation where a number of them lost their packages. Some of them got, there was a time Bank of Uganda had a voluntary retirement program. So some were paid a lot of money. And because they were not they never thought about this, how to use this money. The thing that came in their mind was to start a business, and they had never tried any business at all. They had never traded. So they had nil experience. So some crafty business people came to them. So they said, yeah, we can do business together. So I know one case who gave away 20 million to a businessman to go and bring things from Dubai. And that was the last he saw of the money. Another one who wanted to start a hardware store in Kabbalah, but because he did not know how hardware stores are run, so he had to employ someone else to do it. And he was himself living in Makerere, but now needed to come to Kabbalah, and he also lost the business. He didn't stay long. So many of these members lost their packages, the benefits they received, they didn't benefit from them. One case was very similar to what I think Mike told us. This guy, he kept on coming back to the bank. He would say that he's coming to read in the library, but would come and sit there maybe up to lunchtime. And because he was part of the bank, some people would give him lunch, then would go back home. This took quite a long time. So some people, were approaching some of us saying, look, this guy is embarrassing. Those of you who are in management, do something, talk to him, do something. Now it so happened that that particular guy, I had spoken with him 3 times before he took the retirement benefit. I asked him, because this was voluntary, I asked him, I said, why do you want to retire now? You still have a few years to retire. He told me that this is the only chance I have to get such a lump sum of money. I will never have another opportunity for such a big amount of money. I said, how do you know? How do you know the future? He said, no, I want this money. So I asked him, what are you going to do with this money? Oh, I will think about that when I get the money. So he said he would think about it when he gets the money. So I said, you can't, you need to think about it now. And he was an assistant director at that time in the bank, an assistant director as a senior people in the Bank of Uganda. So I persuaded him many times to try to ignore this, but he refused. So at the end of the day, he lost almost all the money and became a big embarrassment to not only himself, but to others who knew him. So again, because he had not thought about this, I think, much the way he should have done. We also had a few cases of confusion sometimes. We had another case who, when he retired, like today was the last day that the Bank of Uganda had a contract with him. So from tomorrow, because tomorrow is still a working day, So what he did, I think for about a week and a half, he would dress up in his suit, drive from his home, come and park his car next to the post office. At that time, that parking area was not, it had not been, people had not been stopped from parking there. He would buy a newspaper and then read from around 9, maybe up to about 11, 12. Then we would drive away to maybe some club, maybe a few friends, then we'll go back home. And he did that, I think, for about 8, 9 days. You ask yourself, why was he doing that? Maybe there was a problem at home, I don't know. Like Mike said, maybe there was some other issue. But it seems to me that the idea of leaving the bank permanently, I think, had not hit him. And when he got the letter, it didn't hit him. So it is only when he could not come inside, that's when it started hitting him. And therefore, I think this, while it happened a long time back, but I think it's still possible to happen even today. So we had cases like that. In my personal case, as deputy governor, I was entitled to bodyguards. I was entitled to a car. But I decided that we needed to have our own personal cars, much earlier before leaving back to Uganda. So I had a car, my wife had a car. So when the day that I left the bank around 3 p.m. after handing over. And I handed over to my colleague who is here, to Patrick, because Patrick was, at that time was still at the bank. The governor was away. And so when I left, the bodyguards took me up to home. And then they said, now we are going back. So they drove back with the driver. So I kind of felt a bit uncomfortable because although I had guards at the gate, but the fact that this, every time I was going with this people all the time, even although I tried to prepare before, because about 1 year before I left, I would ask them to be away over weekends. They would tell me, no, Mr. Okello, our instruction is to be with you permanently. So we can't leave you. But I managed to persuade them because each time I went with them to Lira, I would treat them very well. So they felt nice. So they said, okay, we are risking our work. If something happens to you, we shall be in trouble. I said, no, because I wanted to get used to the idea of being alone without them, the idea of driving around the city and so on without them. But initially, the first few days, it was kind of a bit difficult to adjust. The other issue that I found very interesting was that when I was in the bank, I used to get information on fuel prices, inflationary statistics, core inflation, this, that. and those ones would be given as an average. They would say the average for fuel in Kampala, in the north, in Mbarara, this is the average. So the national average is this. So that is what was in my mind. But I had actually not seen fuel prices, pump station prices. So now when we started driving, especially with my wife, now when we are going to Lira, because we did a lot of driving between Kampala and Lira. So now we needed to buy fuel. So you see many different, fuel prices. So eventually we said, look, we need to save money. We need to, save as much as we can. So we went for the cheapest, not knowing that the cheapest would give us a lot of problems. So this place where we went to, I think was selling adulterated petrol. So we had my wife had the area car. So many times we were using that car. So that car developed problems. And when we took it to the mechanic, they said, look, the fuel is causing problems in the engine. So it costs us a lot of money to drain the vehicle, to make repairs. So at that point, we decided that it is cheaper to go to those stations, which may be expensive, but they're more reliable. So from that time, we decided that we would take fuel only either from Total or from Shell. If both of them don't have fuel, then we shall go to the next one, maybe one of these others that are relatively big. Because the reasoning was that Shell, it's a big company. They don't want to have negative reputation for their products. Total, the same thing. So they are more likely to be better than all these others. So there's usually going to be some kind of confusion because of what you have been used to, moving from that to something that is new. So maybe we can now go to why we need to plan, because I think planning from what we have heard from Michael and what Sopab said, I think planning is really, really important. And as Kabbalah told us yesterday, I think the issue of why, why, if we answer that question, I think it helps us to be able to proceed, to be able to see what we can do. So I have listed here a number of reasons. I'm sure there are more reasons than this, why I think that we should plan. The first one I have here, I said that in a broader context, planning is, as a human activity, it's actually biblical. It's something the Bible supports quite strongly. Now, if we believe that God is the one who created us, we believe that, He created us for His purpose, for good things. Therefore, whatever He has said, if we can try to interpret it in a way that can help us to be able to do what needs to be done, I think we shall be fulfilling maybe his plans. So the first one I've quoted there is Genesis 1, 26 and 28. Now in this one, in Genesis 1, verse 26, it says that, then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over livestock, over all the earth, over everything that crawls or that walks upon the earth. Then in verse 28, he says something very interesting. He said, let them fill the earth and subdue it. So when you take these two, later on he talks about plants also, the plants that have given you these plants for food and so on. So now when you think about all these, the environment, the fish, the lake, the seas, you think about the animals, you think about all these things that we have around us. To rule over them or to take control over them, to subdue them, you cannot subdue them properly without thinking about how you would do that. You must think carefully how you need to do that. I'm sure that many of you have seen documentaries on some of these people who study animals. They may study an animal for 3 months, for 6 months, to understand why they behave that way, how they behave, why they behave that way, and therefore what they can do to be able to either help that animal or to use it for their purpose. So that meant that to do that, you need to have some planning. You need to plan carefully what you're going to do, what you're going to do first, second, third, fourth, and so on. So it will be important. I think God was telling us that in terms of He has given us all these things, so we need to do something with them. Now, as we have already seen many times when we work on a daily basis for someone, we may be earning some money. Now, there are not many of us in this country who would earn lots of money. The ones who earn, millions of shillings per month, they are not really many. But majority probably would not. Probably majority probably would earn, 5 million, below 5 million. Those ones who earn 30, 40, 50 million are very, very few. Probably you can count them. So if you're going to plan with that money, at the time you retire, it will still be a challenge. And therefore, there is need. This verse is telling me that there is need for us to think of what else can we do to be able to generate additional income compared to what we have. Because if we don't think about it, it's going to be hard for us to start thinking like the gentleman I told you who wanted to start a hardware shop. You need to think about this early. You need to start practicing it early so that by the time you leave normal work, you have some idea, you have some experience, so you can do something with it. The one that supports planning directly is the one that is about Luke in the New Testament. It says Luke 14:28. And I just have it here. I didn't have that in my head. It says that this was Jesus himself speaking. He says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? For if he lays the foundation and is not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule him, saying, this fellow began to build and was not able to complete it. So Jesus is saying that in this particular case, although he was talking up in a different context of those ones who want to become his disciples, what they need to consider, the kind of issue they need to consider. But here, I think what he was telling us is that if we want to do something, we need to sit down and do some estimation. We need to sit down and do some planning so that we can know the pitfalls, we can know the issues, the constraints, so that once we decide to go for it, we are as aware of all the issues as possible. If we don't do that, we just jump into it, we begin to see problems, then many times we just give up. So it will be important for us, I think, in this particular case, I think to try to be able to think much more widely, maybe outside the box, so that we are able to achieve something. The other reason why we need to plan, as has been said already, nobody is willing to hire us at a certain age. We reach a certain age, however good we are not able to do anything. We are not able to do well. We are not able to work well because our abilities have gone down. So there is need for us to plan that at that point when our abilities go down, we are then able to fall back or rely on what we have saved, on what we have accumulated to enable us to live. I give you the example of my dad, having lived 32 years and he retired at fairly, at 66 because they kept on asking him renewing his contract. And so he lived another 32 years. So now, if you live that long, you still need all these basic things. You need to have clothing, you need to have food, you need to have all these things. So you need to be the primary provider for yourself. You're going to rely on some other people. Your children might help, but they may also get tired. Relatives may help, but they may also get tired. So even if someone is going to help you, you need to have something on your own. And if you're going to someone for help, if you say, I have this, can you help me with that? You are more likely to be helped than if you have nothing. So it will be important, I think, for us to look that way. Also, it stimulates us to think about the lifestyle that we are going to lead. What kind of lifestyle are we going to choose? How do we want to live after retirement? What is it that we want to do after retirement? There's a lady I know who also retired. This lady was running a private business. I think he handed over the business to one of the sons. But our aim after retirement was to travel almost all over the world to visit, if possible, all countries. And I think she had the money, so she traveled to many places. And sometimes when she traveled to Vietnam, one time she told me, what are you going to do in Vietnam? So no, there are many good things to see there. So this was our decision. And therefore, we all need to think systematically of what we want to be, what we want to do. I think that can help us. So in order for us to plan, we cannot do that without thinking about the kind of lifestyle we need to lead. Also, when we think about it, it helps us to make informed choices. There are always many choices that are before us. And therefore, we need, as we go along, we need to be planning which choice do we make at this stage. The world is so hard, the world is so tough. Sometimes you can plan something and many changes can take place. You need to revert that, you need to change direction. So there are always choices to be made. And therefore, one needs to be thinking about it. What kind of choice should I make at this point? What should I do at this point? And I've said there, I've quoted there in the book of James 1, verse 5, which talks about wisdom. I think this is where we need wisdom a lot from God, because many of us, we're all limited. Whether we accept or we don't accept, we're all limited. Our knowledge is limited. We don't know much about the future. We may know a few things, but we really don't know what's going to happen. We don't know whether there'll be an earthquake here, in the next few minutes. But God, we know that God knows all those things. So many times, I think we need to go back to Him, to ask Him to help us, give us wisdom. And this verse tells us that if we go back to Him, we ask Him, He's generous, He will give us the wisdom that we need so that we can make the appropriate choices. In life, if you make 10 decisions and 8 are good ones, people will say you are wise. If you make 10 decisions and 8 are bad, they'll say you're not wise. So being wise tends to reflect the kind of decision we make and how we make them. So planning helps us to make informed choices. Also, it helps us to set up some sort of a timetable for certain activities, because if you want to do something, then you need to say, by this time I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. So for us, for example, we decided that since we were going to live in Lira, we needed to have finished our home, the home that we are going to live in, by, latest maybe by about 2003, 2004. So now that would be the time that we thought we should finish. And therefore we would work backwards to say, now, what do we need to do? We need to get a loan. Do we need to get this? Do we need to get that so that we can get that house done? so that even if we didn't finish it at the time we wanted, but at least we have thought about it, and therefore, because of issues that came up, we were not able to finish at the exact time, but we finished soon after that. So it helps us to set up some sort of a timetable, especially for the bigger things. For the bigger things, many times we don't have a timetable for it. Many times we don't take action. We always hear when we are coming to the end of the year, like now, everyone is making New Year resolutions, but during February, March, April, you find nobody's talking about it, because we can think about good things, we can make our choices in our minds, but I think the problem that we have is moving from making the choice to execution, making the choice to execution. And it seems for us in Uganda, I think when you go to many institutions, I think the difference between the planning and the execution, I think, is always the problem. Many of us, I think, are good planners. There was a time I did some work. I was asked by the Prime Minister's office to join a group that was doing some work on Makerere University about paying for the staff of the university, the professors, and so on. So I worked with a group of people, but I was the one in charge of the financing side. And so you find that the at the time, even as we were trying to do the work in terms of what to do, if you have made this decision, when should it be implemented? So the government, we were appointed by the Prime Minister's office. The government was saying, just give us the plan. Don't give us the timetables. Now when we say, look, when you don't get timetables, it's difficult always to implement. So if you have a timetable, you know that this must come first, this must come second, this must come third, this must come fourth. Now, we were aware that the government could not raise money to increase salaries, but we said, look, you need to do this gradually, because you don't have the money. You can do something in the first year, maybe the second year, do that, the third year. By the third year or the fourth year, you are now arriving at the level that we think would be satisfactory to these workers at the university. But so the timetable was not, so for them, they found hard to accept the idea of a timetable. Then also, many times we need to work with others. So we need to identify who we are going to work with, because many times we can't work alone. You can have family members, you can have some other people who can work for you. For example, we were living in Kampala, so we needed someone in Lira who we thought was reliable to help us with the building. Someone was going to steal the cement, to steal this, to steal that. So we needed to find out people who we thought we could work with, so that whatever plans we had would be able to proceed smoothly. So always we need to identify, we need to think of what kind of people we are going to work with. Also, planning helps us to assess the risks. What are the risks that we see? And how can we mitigate the risks? Many accountants know about risk because you run many businesses. And therefore, because you run many businesses, risks are always part of what you discuss. So it's always also good to think about personal risks. If you're planning to do this, what are the risks? And then when we plan, it also helps us to determine the manner in which the plans to be executed. Because to execute a plan requires a lot of discipline. And if you don't have personal discipline, it's always very, very hard. Many people always have plans to be able to do this, to be able to do that, but it is the lack of discipline that many times lets them down. So discipline in doing this is always very, very, very important. When do we do the planning? I think this is also important. We have heard from Mike that when he started working, the retirement age was very far. I think that the ideal time would be to start soon after when I started work. You may not have any good idea about what kind of lifestyle you're going to lead after you retire, but some of the things that you need to do, you need to start immediately. If you don't start them immediately, getting used to them, getting a culture to get used to them may be quite difficult. So I think starting early is a good thing, and especially in this planning, I think there's a lot to do with savings, because we need to do a lot of savings. So something like savings, if you have started earning regular income, it's good to decide out of this money, maybe I'm going to be able to save this and use this one. If you decide that early enough, however small it is, it will begin to grow. It will begin to accumulate. So that would be quite important. And therefore, I think it's important for us to start as early as possible. If we can start at the time we are starting to work, anytime, but I think long before retirement, because as I've said, we need to think about this as best as as best as we can. And then even if you have thought of something, we need to be reviewing it on a regular basis, modifying it, because things are changing all the time, and therefore we need to keep them up to date. Even if we may not be writing them down, we have them in our minds, but I think thinking about them and seeing, what can be done, I think it's an important thing. Now, what should we plan for? First, I think is family. As I mentioned, some of the people who came to me, are their children staying with them. So if you're going to retire before your child finishes school, then it is different from when you retire, when your child is already out of school and working. So you need to think, is this child going to be with me? Is this child going to be away? Will he have finished school, or will she have finished school? Are you going to be at home with the wife or with the husband? So family many times would matter, the way that things are going to be able to work. Then you need to look at routine activities, you need to look at retirement home, and then the big thing, the financials. So on family, as I said, the core family is important. What is going to happen to them? Today in our country, I think because of unemployment, there are many children who have finished university who can get jobs and they're still staying with us as parents. And therefore, because they're still staying with us, they can't afford to stay anywhere. They have not got a job. So one needs to think about them. Are they going to stay there indefinitely? So can't do without taking them into account. Then we need to look at dependents. Many of us come from homes where there's a lot of need for dependents. Sometimes we are sending some relative's child to school. We are doing something with some dependents. So if they're with us, we need to think about them at the point of retirement. Are they going to be there, or are they going to be there? Extended family is the same thing. So this would be important. Routine activities. What kind of business, what kind of thing are we going to do? Are we going for consultancy? Are we going for farming, for trading? So these, we need to think about them carefully, because many times people will rush. They'll say, okay, because my friend is doing farming here, another one is doing farming there, I think I can also do farming. And when you start doing that without really preparing for it, it can be a big problem. We experienced this ourselves. Although we ran these two schools, we also decided to start a farm. We had thought about it for quite some time. And so we decided to go for piggery. Now, when we went for piggery, we had talked roughly to some vet people, what everybody does and so on. So we actually started. So we put a building. We got someone, we hired someone we thought had qualifications. And then we went and bought some pigs. We came to Kampala here, went to some farms that are very big. We bought some pigs, so we took them there. But because of the culture of the people we had asked to help us, because we couldn't be there ourselves. So the guys we employed were guys who were not used to making themselves dirty. They were in school to learn about, they did diplomas and so on, but they're not done practical work on how you deal with a pig, how you deal with a cow, how you deal with this. So for them, they would want some other person to come and clean the pig's place, mix the feed, do that, and so on. So when we are spending the money, we spend the money on the wrong feeds, for example. So some of the pigs were not growing, some of them became very fat, but they were not growing. They were not, the meat that was coming from them was not the type of meat that would have been required. So that went on for maybe about 2 years. So we decided to close the place. Because it was a bad experience. But this was partly because we were not fully prepared for it. We had simply visited a few farms and thought that that was enough, but that was not enough. So we needed to be sure that the ones we are going to employ would be the right people, and they knew what to do. They would know what to do, and therefore they would write the right reports. They would give us requests for maybe the right medicines for them, the right things for them. But unfortunately, this did not happen. So it was a big learning lesson. We also tried to do passion fruits. We actually got seedlings from Narrow, and so when we tried to follow all the rules that they give us, but unfortunately it didn't work. The rules didn't work. So the first time we lost a lot, but we didn't give up. We went back to try to do the same thing. So now the passion fruits are doing much better than the way we started. So many times we can think about doing this, doing that, but I think we need to learn more. We need to, before we make a choice, we need to really be involved in it so that when we make a choice, we make the right ones. Also, when we leave, sometimes we may be involved in community affairs, could be clan matters, could be clubs, could be politics, like our friend here, Protazio, is, and a few others, joining politics. I am sure that my interaction with Protazio before he left URA, I had no doubt in my mind that he was going to go for politics. So he had prepared his mind. Because I talked to him many times before, he had prepared his mind and prepared for it properly. So for him, it's not a shock. It's something that is getting used to, and I think he's doing well. And our prayer is that he will become the next MP for his area. Then, leisure, as we have said, can be something that somebody wants. Retirement home, I think the most important thing is to have an owned home, not something that you rent. Because renting is always very hard. There's a lot of stress in renting. So if one can work towards getting a retirement home, I think that would be important. Now, for many people, if you've not built a house, you need to think about the area where you want to put the house in, the convenience, the proximity to medical facilities, telecom networks, grocery outlets, and things like that. For example, like in my place, we never thought about telecom networks. Now, as we know today, a lot of meetings are on Zoom, on different platforms. Now, where our house is, the network is very, very poor. So many times when I'm involved in training like this one, I have to go to our school because our school is in a place which is a bit high, and that's where the network is better. So, which is about 2 kilometers away. Sometimes I've got to go to town, which is about 5 kilometers away. So if I had taken telecom network seriously, maybe the home would be near the town more than where it is. So these things are important, depending on what you want to do. So if you have not built a house, you want a house to retire, this is something that you need to think about. Then that takes us to financials, because financials are really the key, the most important thing. And in this one, there are basically two things that I'm going to speak about. One is to do one's best to grow a financial base. Grow maybe other assets. Because these are the ones that will help you at the time you're no longer able to work. If you don't have an adequate financial base, I think it'll be very, very hard to be able to do that. So we need to grow that. The other one is about managing routine expenses. Many times in this country, we like to enjoy ourselves. Like Michael was saying, we like to enjoy ourselves. We spend a lot of money, I think, on consumption. Actually, for many years, I think our national savings ratio to the GDP, I think, was around 13%, 14%. I don't know where it is now. But in East Africa, I think we were behind Kenya and Tanzania, and for a long time. So, and I think it's because we like consumption quite a lot. We like to enjoy ourselves. We like to consume a lot. So I think that if we think about the future, we need to make sacrifices. We need to decide what kind of expenses are we going to meet, at what level, and therefore what is going to remain for savings. Because savings, I think, would be really quite key. Without the savings, it would be very, very hard for us to be able to do this. To do this that we are talking about. As I said here, without a saving culture, it is hard to accumulate savings in any meaningful way. And without savings, we can't invest and have to rely on other savings for investment. A number of times I sat on some negotiating teams with people from the IMF, from the World Bank, and the European Union, and so on when I was still in the Bank of Uganda. And many times I was reminded, many times, that your savings are small. So what this one you're borrowing is savings from our people, our citizens. So we have to have a say in what you are borrowing. Because you don't have those savings, it is us who are providing those savings. It is our people. It is our citizens. It is our tax that is going to give you this money. So we need to have some sort of say in it. So we know that savings, I think, is quite important. And I think that to get this culture moving, I think for many of us, we need to start this at an early stage. For me, I was privileged, and I thank God very much for it. In my time, we used to go to primary 6, then we do our PLE at primary 6, then we go to junior 1, junior 2, then we then finish junior 2, then we go to senior 1. Now, in my junior 1 and junior 2, we had our head teacher at that time, I think, was very forward-looking. He was in the habit of inviting people who are exposed. So we had somebody who came, had been abroad from that area, and he came to talk to us about savings, why we need savings. I was still a very young boy, but I was very much impressed by what he said. So he said, if you get some pocket money, there's a post office savings office here. You can put 1 shilling, you can put 50 cents. Because in those days we used to deal in cents, and and shilling was very, very big. So soon after that, I actually opened a savings account in the post office that was nearest to us, because my father had given me, I think, some 2 shillings for pocket money. So I opened it there, and that account I kept on, putting some little money there. So it kind of helped me to develop the habit of saving some money. Then when I finished Form 6, I got a job with the Ministry of Education, a temporary job. I was a clerk in the Ministry of Education in Lira, helping the Chief Education Officer on various things. So I was being paid 520 shillings a month. And I worked there from January 1970 to August before going to Nairobi. And my father, had many wives. So my mother is the first wife. So she was the one who is always resident at our main home. So I was living with my mother, and there were only 2 of us at that time. So many times on weekends, I would be with her, because I'd not been with her for a long time, because my father used to go with us wherever he was working. If he was posted to one area, all of us, the children, would go there. So my mother would be there alone. So I needed to learn a few things about her. I wanted to find out how she got married, how she, how marriage used to take place in those days, things like that. So one time she surprised me. She called me and she said, you sit down here. And on a mat, there were chairs, but she said, you sit on a mat here. So she told me that what I'm going to tell you is very important. She had never been to school. My brother never went to school. She told me that now that you are working, we know that you are working for a short time before you go back to school. I want you to keep some money aside. I want you to keep some money aside. And that money you give me to start buying some goats. I will buy some goats for you here. I'll buy a goat maybe today, then another month I'll buy another goat. These goats, when they grow, I will exchange with a cow. And then I can keep those cows. If there are 2, 3, you keep on doing that. Then when it comes to getting married, you will not need to depend on anybody for dowry. You would marry your wife with the cows that you have yourself bought. So for her, she was looking at dowry, but she didn't know that she was telling me about saving. Actually, she was telling me about saving, that you need to save some money. You can do this, do the other one, but you need to put some money aside. So that reinforced the idea of savings in me, and therefore I have taken it. I took it seriously from that time, and I have been passionate about this. I've been passionate about this, and I think I'll remain passionate until the Lord calls me home, because I think it's very, very important. When I got married, I talked to my wife about this, and my wife kind of found it a bit difficult, because we wanted to have a joint savings account. She said, no, you have your account, I will have mine, for some time, and we see how each of us behaves. So I said, okay, why don't we then open a joint one where we just put some little money as savings. So we agreed I would put 50, she would also put 50 shillings. So I said, if we decide to break it, we'll just give each other half. That would be that would be it. So we started putting the money together. So with time, I think we started developing trust in each other, confidence, and so on. So eventually, we actually removed the accounts that were for each of us. So now for a long time, all our accounts are in joint names. And we have accounts that are for specific things. We opened an account for just paying school fees. And at that time, my children were still very small, but we said these children will grow and they will need, if they go to good school, they will need money. But also because I'm the firstborn in our home, my father had 35 children, 35 of us, because he had many wives. Now we have 19 who are left. And because I'm the firstborn, I had got this message many times that you will be responsible for these children. You will be responsible for these children. You will be responsible for these children. So that message came many times. And because I had seen him, he had sent children of his brothers to school. There were about 8 of them who were living with us when I was a small boy. So I thought it was a natural thing. So my thinking was very much attuned to the fact that my father expects me to do this. So it's something that I cannot run away from. So I told my wife, I said, look, we are many at home, my father has many children and so on. So we need to save money. We need to save money for these people. And so we started doing that. And therefore, we have never had any problem with paying school fees. We have never, I think we have borrowed money maybe once or twice. So it has been extremely useful because we have also learned in the process how you can invest, maybe here, how you can invest there. So it has been very, very useful. So what we also did, we wanted our children to do something similar. So when they started going to secondary school, senior 1, senior 2, I bought each of them a diary. So I said, the money I'm giving you today as you go to school is my money, not yours. You're going to be like a steward, you're going to take care of it. At the end of the term, I want an accountability of how you have used the money. If you have bought soda, you have bought kinder, you have bought this, record all those in this diary. Then together we shall check and see where your expenditures are big, where they're small, so that if you see that you are doing something that you surprises you, then you think about changing it. So one of my daughters went to Gayaza, found that she was spending almost 3/4 of the money on soda, on Coca-Cola. And so we said, look, should we be spending all this money on Coca-Cola? So I think at that point she made up her mind to limit the Coca-Cola she was taking. But the idea was for them to get used to the idea of saving money. And then later on, we taught them about treasury bills, about this, about that. So I believe that our last born, now 28, I think all of them, this idea of saving, I think, has been stuck in them. So I think savings is an important thing. Sometimes when you have a lot of money, you think, or you earn a lot of money every month, the idea of savings may not be strong because that money, you think it will continue. But you can never tell what the world will bring to you tomorrow. So it's a good thing, I think, for everyone to do their best to decide on what level of savings one would need to have. Now, many institutions, we know that apart from the NSSF contributions, they also have provident funds, and some may have some other schemes. So all these schemes, I think, help us to have some savings. So once we save, then we need to reach a stage where we can actually invest this money. We may start with simple assets like maybe fixed deposits in banks. But as the amounts grow bigger and bigger, I think it will be one can then begin to move to other investments, other instruments that may be available in the market. So I think the important thing is to understand that once the saving culture is in us, we can actually grow the money, and the money sometimes can actually grow very big. I think the time we had the financial problem that took place. I don't remember how many years ago. There was a time, I think in Uganda, we had the interest rates went very high, and there are some people who invested in treasury bonds. Interests were going up to 18, 20%. I think it even went to about 22, 23%. So if you lock your money, if you have got 10 million or 50 million, you lock it at 20%, And at that time, the withholding tax, I think, was I think either 10 or 15%. You know, at the end of the day, if you don't need that money immediately, it will accumulate to, you know, to a high level. So it will be important, I think, to be able to do that. So savings, I think, is important. Expenses, as I said, we need to look at this carefully. And usually this is where there are problems. Many times we need to make firm decisions because we have too many pressures that come on us. All of us, you know, somebody wants this from you, somebody wants this from you, somebody wants this from you. And therefore, we need to make a decision on where the limits are because we can't do everything. So we need to make a decision that for extended family, this is where I will stop. And sometimes it's difficult to tell them, but I think sometimes it's good to tell them. They may not like you, but it's good to say, this is where I can stop. I can't go beyond this. We have, in our case, we have sent many children to school of relatives and even those who are not relatives. But for many of them, we also, for many of them, we would also give them, we would tell them that we are going to pay you, or you may be up to senior 1 to senior 4. After that, we're not going to be involved. So you need to prepare money for senior 5, senior 6, or for some vocational training. So once they know that you are firm, they may say bad things about you, but it will help you in terms of managing your resources. If you don't do that, it can be a problem. So I think many of our expenses, you know, the basic expenses, those of which are a little bigger, maybe education, maybe medical, we need to prioritize them. Which ones do we do first, second, third, fourth? If you don't do that, it is hard. And then luxuries, so that we can know where to cut and so on. And then eventually we need to develop discipline to stick to the budget as much as we can. The investments, as I said, you know, we need to drive this. We need to scan the market. You know, today I think there are more instruments that are available in the market, so we need to scan them. We need to talk to, review the, you know, we need to talk to those ones who know, so that they can help us make sure that we are doing the right things. And many times, once you get involved, you know, you need to make sure that the formalities are clear to you, the contractual things are clear to you. Because sometimes you can sign a form, it's not clear what you're signing, so you need to find out clearly what needs to be done. And therefore, it is important to do that. And if you have maturities, you need to make sure that those maturities, you know when they're maturing, you know what you're going to do with them. I think it requires a whole set of sitting together to see how you can manage that. If you don't find time for it, it's going to be a bit hard to be able to manage it. So in conclusion, I want to say that you know, retirement is inevitable. We all know that we're going to retire. It may be the age limit that is telling us, or it may be that we are past the age, that required age limit, but we no longer can perform. So we should know it's inevitable. We should also know that transition to a new lifestyle may be neutral for some people, may be mild, or it may be severe. The experience may be very severe. And therefore, that should help us to tune our minds to retirement. And as we have heard so many times, you know, failing to plan is planning to fail. We also need we need focused ongoing attention, because if we don't have focused ongoing attention and action, it can break along the way. So we need to be focused at all times. And from a financial perspective, I think a steady cash flow is really essential to help us manage a certain quality of life. If we don't have that steady cash flow, it will be hard to manage a steady quality of life. Then at the end, trusting God is key in this whole process, because there are many things that we don't know. So we need to be asking God. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me to give an applause to Mr. Opiokello. Thank you so very much. This is a real thing. It's not academic thing. It's real. We have some 5 minutes to the end of the session. We'll need to have some questions coming through from you, the audience here, and also the audience online. We know we use Slido for the questions. I'm hoping that the team can be able to put the questions clearly so that we can be able to pass them on to Mr. Opiokello for answers. I see comments from Slidos. They surely starting early enough to plan for retirement enable us to get used to things we will use in the retirement. I'm enjoying retirement in farming. I'm a master of my own destiny. The retirement world is beautiful. Please, George, share the bright side. If there are some questions from the online audience, I'll request the team to make those questions available so that we can be able to give them over. Are there some questions that you can send them on the Slido? I don't see the questions on the Slidos. Excuse me. Okay, if just by show of hands, maybe I don't see questions coming through the Slidos.
Maybe Michael, I see something down there.
Yes.
I said, I'm enjoying retirement in farming because I'm a master of my own destiny. Retirement world is beautiful. Please, George, share
the bright side. Yeah.
First of all, my names are not George. It's Geoffrey, David Opiokello. I'm sorry if the impression I gave was that everything is bad, but I think many times, like journalists, to push us to do something, I think sometimes when the picture that is given is tough, it tends to force people to do something. But I think it's also equally true that there are a number of cases where people indeed are enjoying themselves. They planned well. They are well prepared for it in their minds, physically, financially. So they are doing what they wanted to do, and they are really enjoying the time that they are retired. So it is true that some people are really doing that. And I'm one of those. I'm enjoying my retirement. I've never complained about retirement because I'm doing what I wanted to do. And I feel that I'm making a lot of contribution to society, not only through what I do in Lira, but various other ways, because many people come to approach me on different things. And therefore, I feel that retirement is something worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Opiokello. There are questions here from the online audience. The first one, do women handle retirement challenges differently from men? Do women handle retirement challenges different from men? That's one. What is your take on voluntary early retirement at, say, 50? What's your take on voluntary early retirement at, say, 50? As former deputy governor, do you think it's fair for anyone to be paid the same salary for many years, let's say 10 years, when actually his or her family is expanding, especially for those that have reached the bar in our ranks? As you are aware, this fails them to save and invest, since the salary is not even enough to cater for the basic needs. I don't know whether this question comes from a colleague in Bank of Uganda. Mr. Opiokello.
Okay, the first one, the women handle retirement in the same way. Can you repeat that?
Do women handle retirement challenges differently from men?
My experience has mostly been with men. I've not, maybe it's only my wife I've seen, but because we do many things together, And therefore, it is kind of difficult to split. Say, this has happened to her, this has happened to me. But I think that anyone, the challenge that is there, I think whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, I think the challenges are the same. So if one has prepared for it well, I think the only complications are if the woman, you are still married and you have to deal with the husband and you have to agree on what needs to be done. And maybe the agreement is getting difficult to be reached. I think that's where usually there would be problems. But as someone said earlier, I think it was Michael who said earlier, for us, the men, many times in my experience, many men tend to, I think, treat their wives maybe not as well as they should have. But it seems to me that what I've seen seems to me that as people grow older, the women seem to take charge of many things in homes. For example, my mother, I think she kind of suffered quite a lot because of being the first wife. But as my father grew older, she became the leader in the home. So if we talk to her father about anything, she would say, first talk to your mother. If she agrees, we shall go ahead. If she doesn't agree, we shall not go ahead. Because I could see that it was relying on her more and more than before. And therefore, I think if we treat them well, work very hard, you are self-disciplined, it seems to me that you'll be able to do a much better job. But if you are not prepared, I think it can be quite difficult. It can be quite difficult. I think one can go through stress and a lot of distress if you're not fully prepared from a mindset point of view, as well as from a financial point of view. And the third one?
The third one, I think, was a comment where salary seems to be fixed for 10 years, and yet responsibilities are growing, and then you need to spend a little bit more, and then you fail to save because the salary has been overtaken by the responsibility. And I think this comment comes in from there. There was one which I'd seen, but some kind of disappeared on the screen.
I think, Michael, given that last one, the person is saying that you fail to save because you have many responsibilities. There will always be many responsibilities at any one moment. One has to decide which ones you take, which ones you don't take. I think also saving is more of the mindset than the physical money, than the money you're going to give. Once you have decided that this is what I'm going to do, and you try to stick to it, it will be done. But if you have not decided, because then it forces you to look back and see what you can cut and what you cannot cut, and so on. There was a time I was talking to when I was in Kabbalah, we used to have a group of Christian men and women. We used to meet in town in Kampala once a month. And I was asked to talk about personal finances. There was a guy, a lawyer from the Attorney General's office, who asked me. He said, look, Mr. Okello, you're telling us about savings because Bank of Uganda pays you a lot. For us, we are paid very little. How can you save if you are being paid 300,000-400,000 shillings? So I told him the same thing, that, whether you're paid 200,000, 300,000, you can decide to save 2,000, 5,000. Once you begin doing that as your habit, And as Yerogaba told us, as a culture, once you get used to it, it becomes part of you. And once it becomes part of you, as you get more money, you just add it on, you just add it on, and just add it on.
No amount of money is too little to save.
Yeah.
There's a comment here. Thanks, Opiokello, for a wonderful presentation. Thanks for the presentation. An addition I can make is that it is important as a retirement strategy to start creating passive income when someone is still in employment, and target to grow the passive income to be higher than the employment income by the time one retires. In this way, the transition will be seamless with God's guidance. The issue of passive income when you are still working. Mr. Opiokello, your comment. Passive income when you're still working. Is it?
I don't know. When it says passive income.
I'm reading it from here.
Yes. Can you read again? Sorry.
This is a comment from Tom Paji. He's saying that an addition I can make is that it is important as a retirement strategy to start creating passive income when someone is still in employment, and target to grow the passive income to a higher than employment income. By the time one retires, in this way, the transition will be seamless with God's guidance, because the income, passive income, will be higher than your employment income.
Okay, without him defining what passive income is, I think that for this purpose, all income is income, and therefore one needs to look at all of them, whether you define them as passive or regular income from your work. They are all part of your income, and therefore you need to look at all of them each time you want to decide on what to save. If you split them too many times, I think it may be a bit hard to be able to get the clear total picture, the whole picture. So when you put them together, the picture becomes clearer.
Okay. There's one from a slide there. What are some of the success stories for those that have retired you have come across?
Okay, I have seen quite a few success stories. There's a guy who used to be a professor, and he has retired. He's also based in Lira. He does a lot of counseling to many young people. He does a lot of giving voluntarily, advice to local government people, to a number of other bodies. And you can clearly see he travels out a lot on his money, the money that, that he gets, from retirement. And I've been to his home a few times, and you can see that he doesn't seem to have any problems as far as money is concerned. So he otherwise would not be traveling the way he does. Recently, he got sick, he got an accident, and he was able to get through it, paying a lot of money to get treated. So I think he's a good example that I've seen. And there are a few others who may be doing some farming, maybe doing, who, at least from the outside, you don't see any issue, any complaint that they are making about maybe lack of money and so on. So I think some of those seem to have been successful during this time when they're in retirement.
Okay, another question there. How does one practically mitigate the risk of loss of running a business while still employed with limited spare resources?
This one is very difficult because most of the businesses that we may start, many times it is somebody else doing the business for you and not you. And therefore, sometimes the experience can be very, very, very bitter. There was a time I got into a business arrangement with a colleague. We had been in school together in Lao College. He was coming from Rukunjiri, and he was dealing with stationery. So when he showed me his results and so on, he seemed to be doing well. So actually I borrowed money at that time. This was in the 80s. I borrowed 1 million shillings so that we could do more business. So when I borrowed that money, he kind of disappeared. He disappeared. I could not see him for a long time. By the time he came back, he was living on Bomber Road. I would visit, his home, but it's only the wife I would normally find there. I would, at that time we didn't have mobile phones. So that experience told me that when you're going to do something, you need to be involved in some way. If you're not involved, you will not actually know what's going on. And therefore, there's need for you to be able to know what's going on. In our case for the school, we started the school when I was still working in the Bank of Uganda, and many times my wife would be there because she had also retired. But when she was here, the person we had asked to be the head teacher would give us reports basically on a daily basis, some reports on a daily basis, others on a weekly basis. And we would ask someone there to go and check what he was saying, because we had found that a number of times they would cheat. For example, there was a time we had instituted a system where the children in the school would be given meat on a weekend, over the weekend. And the documents they had showed that meat had been bought. But when I visited the school one weekend, whenever I visited, I would talk to everybody, the askaris, everyone, every group. I would sit with them, talk to them to find out how things are going. So one of the askaris asked me, said, "Sir, we used to get meat, but now, why did you stop giving us meat?" I said, when did this happen? He said, it happened around this time. And yet the receipts were showing that the meat was bought. So the guys who were there were just eating the money. So it is when you are very far from it, whatever mitigating factor you can have is always hard. As I said, if you can get someone reliable, somebody you believe in, somebody who's reliable, I think it can be helpful, because they can check, they can do checking for you, they can do some work for you. But in today's Uganda, getting those kind of people is never easy. Thank you.
There's an interesting one from Anonymous. Time is a big asset. Do many people lose it in employment? Many people who started out earlier on their own are well off, not as worried. What is your comment? Time is a big asset. Do we lose it in employment?
Yeah, time is a big asset. I agree. I think that if we agree that God has given us 24 hours, all of us, given 24 hours, and yet within those 24 hours, some do better than others. What are they doing which we are not doing? For us to consider that we are losing our time. Okay, there maybe we spend a lot of time in employment, but I think it is still a good thing when you're not spending time on employment to think about what else you can do early enough, so that not only in the thinking, but what you can do so that as you approach retirement, you are now better prepared. I think the time, both for those ones who are outside employment and those ones who are in employment, I think hard work, discipline, those kind of things can never disappear. Because if you are not hardworking, you are not disciplined, even in the business world, you'll not be able to do well. So you need to be a practicing, somebody who is really hardworking, somebody who is disciplined, so that you can ensure that things are working the way they're supposed to work. But I agree that to some extent, because we spend a lot of time in work, the time left to be able to visit what we are doing, to check what we are doing, may be a bit limited, depending on what we are doing. And therefore that can be a disadvantage for those who are in employment. But if you choose not to be employed, you need to be prepared also for constraints, because there are problems everywhere, and see how best to meet, I think, those constraints. Once you have done that, then I think it's helpful.
Okay, the last question is from David Serebe. Of the two, financial and social shocks, which is more devastating after retirement?
I think the financial shocks are more devastating because usually when you don't have the money, many times you have to go to somebody else, to help you. And sometimes it can be very hard. If you are retired, you may have to approach your children, and your children, they also have their own issues, own problems. You may want to borrow from somebody, and it's not possible to borrow. So I think adjusting from a financial shock is always more difficult than from a social shock. So I think the financial side, we need to do everything possible to make sure that there is something that we have done that has been accumulated so that the shock, even if it's there, maybe it's not as, as bad, because it tends to influence everything else around us. And therefore, I think that the financial shock is probably bigger than the social shock.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Opiokello. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to thank Mr. Opiokello for this wonderful presentation. Mr. Opiokello, the gift from the Institute is on that table. At your leisure, sir, as you are walking down, you will pick them and just to take your seat. I give this session back to CPA David Timothy. Back to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that enriching presentation. Let's just give a round of applause again. I think we are now more enlightened about retirement. And to the people of one president, I think it's early enough for you to start planning. Let's thank our chairman also, Mr. Michael Otonga, whose earlier stories were hilarious. It's an encyclopedia of the social life of the early years. Yes. Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
It's good you turned around from that, and I see now you look healthy. You look younger than your years. And I admire Mr. Opiokello as well. One time I saw him in the gym, and he was so fit, riding the bike. I think he's the youngest 71-year-old I know. If you are younger than him at 71, please raise your hand, otherwise keep your peace. We are about to break out for lunch. I forgot to recognize some very important people. Our council members, our CEO is also with us. Our 8th president, who is soon to be an MP. And I see him very relaxed. You know, it's unusual to see a contestant in this season not picking his phone. He hasn't picked his phone at all, meaning things are in control. Yeah. So all the best of luck as you go for, he already holds the flag, by the way. Although he confessed he wasn't given any physical flag, but he's a flag bearer for the right party. That is almost certain victory for him. We also have past council members and present, Siphon Cousins. I see Mr. Godfrey Biamugisha here with us. Mr. Biabakama, who is also the chairman, NSSF. CPA Joseph Inosia sits on the board of Bank of Uganda. You're all welcome in your capacities. In case I've forgotten you, please find space in your heart to forgive me, but I'll remember as I get along. Not forgetting my chair, events management, who is also with us. So we are breaking out for lunch. I think we all attended the presentation yesterday on our health. We all remember the portions, which was quarter, which was half. The portion calories shouldn't be more than 2 fists. Yes. But I don't know how someone would finish all this portion. Yes. But anyway, let's watch our health. There's a health camp behind there. Just don't forget to pass there. And I would also like to caution you, especially the men. There are doodles moving around and we are in the environment. It can become very uncomfortable if they get to the engine room. So please just watch out. I'm not a lady, so I don't know the experience for the ladies, but I know for the men, should those doodles get to the engine room, there will be trouble. One time I attended a function where the in-laws had to take off their trousers literally in public because of those things climbing up to the wrong places. So let's watch out for that. Ensure you go for a medical checkup if you have not been going for one. We need to know you're healthy and keep healthy. Observe SOPs at lunchtime. I know you haven't seen each other for long and it might be a time to hug and embrace. Please, let's avoid that. We want you alive. So let's break for lunch. See you in the afternoon. Our next session will be on business opportunities and challenges for startups. That should be at 2 p.m. I expect us all to keep time. We have been a very good audience. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello. The lunch is in the tent behind me. And someone has asked me an interesting question just for housekeeping. The ablutions are right behind there, next to the medical camp. So in case you have some unease, walk right over there. Thank you.